Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's webinar, Analyzing Data from iCloud File Sharing. My name is Julia O'Shea and I'm the Global Marketing Manager here at BlackBag. Before we get started today, there are a few things that I'd like to review. We are recording the webinar, so we will share that on-demand version once the webinar is complete. If you have any questions, please submit them in the questions window and we will be answering them throughout and at the Q&A and in the Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Bruce Hunter. He is a senior forensic engineer here at BlackBag. Bruce retired after 29 years of policing, split between Toronto and Guelph Police Departments in Ontario, Canada. He was instrumental in creating the Internet Child Exploitation and Technological Crimes Unit at the Guelph Police. Bruce has testified at court on both numerous child exploitation and computer and mobile forensics cases, and has been declared an expert in a number of fields in Ontario and New York. He regularly lectures and presents at a number of forensic and legal conferences all over the world. Thanks for joining us today, Bruce. If you're ready, I will hand it over to you to get started.
Thanks, Julie, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever everybody is. I hope everybody is staying safe, healthy during these rather difficult times. Hopefully, all things being fine, I hope things move along. Senior forensic engineer, I think that just means I'm old, but we'll leave that for now. Hopefully, I don't forget where I am or something and walk off and wander into the street. But if I do, and just pull me back and I'll come back again. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the hard work and of course dedication of Julie and Corey from our marketing team. Without their diligence, their hard work, none of this would be possible. These webinars that they put on takes a lot of work. They do a lot of organizing. They get people like me and rope us in and kind of tie us to a chair and get us ready to do these things and make us look good, honestly. So they keep those channels of information open so that we can provide a forum to give that information to you guys out in the world. So again, on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank Julie and Corey, who's probably not with us, and of course Sarah from our training team is with us as well, so I also want to thank her for her help today as well. Again, my name is Bruce Hunter. I'm part of BlackBag's training team, and I mainly focus on macOS and iOS. I do speak a little bit of Windows as well because of my previous commitments. You basically have to know everything. I've been associated with BlackBag since about 2011 when I started contracting with the training team. Basically, I used to, clean up the coffee cups after class and sweep up the room and that type of thing. In 2015, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Of course, that movie reference was completely intentional. And a lot has changed in that time since 2015. As you know now, we're part of the Celebrite family. But the one thing that hasn't changed with BlackBag is the commitment to help examiners and to sort of give examiners the most up-to-date information. And that's kind of what attracted me to BlackBag in the first place. So giving back to the forensic community is something that's really important to me, and I'm happy to be sharing this today. So in this webinar, we're going to be talking and looking a little bit at Apple's newest feature of iCloud file sharing. Like all investigations, this will present some kind of eureka moments and a lot of gotchas in your investigations. This is pretty much on par with everything you're going to see anywhere in the forensic world, so nothing surprising there. We're going to look at iCloud itself, some iCloud services and forensic artifacts associated with iCloud. We're going to look at user interaction with iCloud Drive. We're going to talk about the files contained within iCloud Drive. We're going to find some other information and metadata of files that are found within iCloud Drive. Then we're going to look at the new sharing feature. We're going to see how it works. We're going to see what you as an examiner sees, and of course, how it may affect your examinations. And always at that point in time, we're going to be looking at these new artifacts, what you're going to see and what you're going to not see when you're doing your investigations. Of course, it's really important to know the operating system because it makes forensics a lot easier. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the features, features of iCloud Drive before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of this webinar. iCloud Drive, iCloud itself has been around for a long time. You know, it replaced Mobile Me, and from macOS 10.7 and above and iOS 5, it sort of became part of the daily sort of structure of macOS and iOS. It's becoming more and more integrated with the operating system. So much so that, you know, I like to always make a joke that basically when you go to the Apple Store and you buy your new device and you plop it down on the kitchen table and you set up the camera because you're gonna video your unboxing and then go put it up on YouTube later on. When you're doing that and you go the next as you're going through, it's actually one of the very first next. You know, set up your iCloud account, log into your iCloud account, because it's all important to share that data and move that data seamlessly between all your accounts. It's really important to do that. So integrating that data and all those services is part of Apple's ecosystem now. Apple will give you 5 gigabytes of storage for free. Of course, they're more than happy to sell you some more, but you get the 5 gigs for free. Users can store files in their iCloud Drive. They can be accessed through macOS, the Files application on iOS, through web services, and even, believe it or not, on the Windows world. So you can access it through the Windows world. This is what it looks like when you're navigating in macOS. And what you'll see is now with 10.15, you'll see iCloud is now listed in the sidebar on macOS. So the sidebar being this right-hand side portion of this view. So now you're seeing your iCloud Drive popping up in this view. And it's more and more integrated and basically almost become an extension of the local drive on your computer. Before, you could almost think of it almost like a detached external drive. Now it's more integrated. And you can also see that when you're using macOS, because if you've ever dragged or copied a file from like your desktop into iCloud Drive, it actually moves it. It's actually moving it from one directory almost to another directory. So it's very similar to moving it from your desktop to your documents folder. It just drops it into that new directory. Whereas if you're gonna copy it out to an external device like an NTFS, FAT32, APFS, HFS Plus drive, whatever type of drive you're gonna do it to, in the background, it's actually doing an actual copy paste. So it's keeping it in the same location, whereas with an internal drive, it's actually moving the actual file. So you're actually seeing the difference with the way it's working. This is what it looks like on iOS. For the purposes of this analysis or this webinar, we're not going to be looking so much into iOS because that would be an entirely different webinar, an entirely different subject, and obviously leading us down a different path. But a lot of the concepts that you're going to see here are ported into iOS. It's just the execution's a little bit different. So a lot of people ask, and when we're doing our training, a lot of people ask the same question, you know, if I'm investigating a case and iCloud's involved, like where do I begin? How do I determine that the person's using iCloud? And how do I get this information? Well, I'm a pretty simple person, so I like to do the simple things and go right to the start. And right to the start would be to find the plist file that tracks where the user's iCloud account information is. So when a user is using their Mac computer, they will go to System Preferences, iCloud. And in System Preferences, iCloud, you can log into your iCloud account. And in your login, it'll show your email address that's associated to your iCloud account. And then down on this view here, down on the side, you're going to see the services that you have set available on your iCloud account. These are the services that are going to be sharing information with iCloud or with your other iCloud connected devices. When we're doing our Mac forensics and when we're looking at our Mac computers, the file we're going to be looking for to track this information is users library preferences, mobile me accounts.plist. Yes, they didn't change the name, but anyway, it is what it is. and it tracks the information about the user. So here we will find the user's email address that they use for their account, their iCloud account. Now that in this case is an iCloud account. It could be Gmail or some other email services that you're using. The name of the user, of course, all important that the user has logged in, and something at the very top here, we have got this directory services ID or DSID, which is basically the account number assigned to your iCloud account. This is important if you need to go to Apple later on. It's also important because some services will only be identified by the DSID. So in other words, if you look for a specific service, you will only find that service, and the only reason why you know that user is using that service is because the DSID is part of the key inside the plist file that tracks that information. So you'll only be able to see that. The specific services that are set up by the user in System Preferences iCloud are saved also within that same plist under the Services menu. And you'll see the Services key at the top here. This Services key has all the various services that are available to iCloud, and they will normally be set as true or false under the enabled subkey. So you'll have this subkey and it'll identify whether or not that service has been enabled true or false. In true Apple fashion, a lot of these are true, false. Some of them will say negative or nil or null, and some will say yes, no. It just depends on which one you're particularly looking at that time. But nonetheless, it's going to provide you information on whether or not those services are available. So this is the starting point. This is where you're going to start when you're doing your analysis for iCloud. iCloud will actually save files locally to the user's computer. Now, a lot of users don't realize this. They think it is cloud. But if you think of Dropbox, when you sync Dropbox to your computer, and this is essentially what's happening, when you check that box and say, turn on iCloud Drive, what you are effectively doing is telling iCloud, hey, you know what, sync this information to my Mac, to my computer. So what it's doing is it's going to push this information down. And on a user's Mac, it's going to be found at Users, Library, Mobile Documents. And in here, you will find a directory showing all the files all the applications and files that are found in iCloud. Now, some of this information is going to be strictly iOS related and will only show placeholder folders. For example, you're going to see some like this one here, these ones down here. These are all basically ones that you're going to find. Here's up at the top, we have WhatsApp and stuff like that. These are specific iOS ones. And even although there are folders here, you're not likely to see WhatsApp information on here. You're not likely to see the text input information or iTunes or mobile Safari or something like that. Those are all iOS related. We're going to talk about this a little later on when we actually look at it live on a forensic machine. Couple of gotchas when we're doing this. The main gotchas are this. You sometimes, when you open up Finder, you may see a little cloud with an arrow pointing down. This indicates that the file has not been downloaded onto this local computer, meaning that it is available in the cloud, and as long as you have an internet connection, you can connect to this device, this file in the cloud, but it is not available locally or offline. When your computer's offline, you will not be able to access it. In order to access it, you would click that little cloud icon, this little cloud icon here. You would click it, and then you would get the little circle that with the pie kind of thing that fills up, and it tells you it's been downloaded. And once it's downloaded, it's accessible offline. But until that point, it's not accessible, and you can only get it while you're connected to the network. Now, when we do look at this in examination, we go back to our users library mobile documents, you will find that files with an extension .iCloud are those files that are found only in the cloud. So in this situation, we have a video here. img0061.mov.iCloud. That .iCloud name, this file here, that .iCloud is representative of that file being in the cloud and not available offline. So if you were expecting that this was your piece of evidence that you were looking for, this is not going to be available to you without connecting this device to iCloud and actually downloading it, or getting a warrant, going to Apple and getting the information from Apple, which in a lot of cases is not practical. You'll actually find that that .iCloud file is just another name for a plist. Woohoo! Anyone who does Mac forensics, you should be aware of plist files. And guess what? We've got another plist here. And what is this plist telling us? Well, first of all, it's telling you the name of the file, and it's also telling you the file size. That size is in bytes, and it's going to tell you the size of the file, and it's going to tell you the name of the file as it sits in iCloud. So just another little gotcha there. Now, there are some really neat things and neat behaviors that iCloud Drive does. If a user was aware of the location library mobile documents, if a user was aware of it, they could try and navigate to it by selecting in Finder Go to, and then selecting the mobile library documents, as we've done here in this view. You can see we've chosen the Go To menu. Now, what this is supposed to do is this is supposed to open up a Finder window and display the path that you've just given it, you've just asked it to. So it would take you directly to the user's library, which is what that tilde is, for those of you who don't know. The tilde at the start represents the user's home folder, users, library, mobile documents. What does Apple do? Well, Apple doesn't do that. What happens is if you go and do this, oops, if you go click on that, it takes you back to iCloud Drive. It does not let you go to that location. So if you wanted to navigate to that location on your own, you couldn't. It wouldn't let you go there. The only way to do it is to use terminal. And if you use terminal and went in and typed in CD for change directory to users, library, mobile documents, like we're saying here, it would navigate you to this location and let you go in and view it. So if I open this up, that looks very familiar to what we just saw in BlackLight. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing all the packages that are able to save files to iCloud Drive, and we'll be talking about this later on. Now, there's a couple of other neat little points here in the forensic world. Being forensic people, we tend to be suspicious, and we tend to be a little inquisitive about how things happen. So being a rather suspicious person and inquisitive person that I am, and maybe a little deviant, I don't know. But anyway, what I tried to do was I thought, if I can go here, I wonder if I put a folder in this directory, my own folder, would it go to iCloud Drive? So on a test machine, what I did was I created a my private folder and dropped it into this location and then put a bunch of files in it. When I closed out, it did not show up in iCloud Drive at all. So it's another place to another way to locate it, because if somebody then went and looked at it, they would not be able to find those files. So if you went and opened up iCloud Drive, it wouldn't show up. However, if you put that into the Cloud Docs folder, which we're going to find out in a minute what that represents, that will sync to iCloud Drive. But if you put it in just in the folder in this directory, somewhere in any one of these directories, or in any directory, or just create your own directory within here, guess what? It's not going to show up. So I think this might be a good spot. If there are any questions, we can have a quick stop for some questions, and then we can move on to the actual main part of this section. Are there any questions at all, Julie, right now, or have I scared everybody?
Hey, Bruce. We did have one come in. So are WhatsApp messages decrypted in the cloud?
So WhatsApp messages, I'm not sure if they're decrypted in the cloud or not, because when we're talking about WhatsApp messages, what you're generally going to find is that is going to be a placeholder. That information will be found within your iCloud drive or your iCloud allotment that Apple has. So if you went to Apple and got that information, you would get it. Now, when Apple gives it to you, everything is encrypted in the cloud. So when Apple gives you that stuff, all that stuff, if you go for a warrant and get it, it will be encrypted anyway. And you go through this, basically, anyone ever seen those, you know, the Russian dolls you buy where you've got a doll and then you open it up and there's another one, and you open it up and there's another one, and you just keep going down. That's exactly what you basically get. You get a folder, and inside a folder is another folder, and so on and so forth. And eventually we'll get down to what you're looking for. I have not seen WhatsApp messages in the cloud. And just because there is a directory there for WhatsApp, that doesn't necessarily mean to say that WhatsApp is actually saving information there. The likelihood is that WhatsApp is saving those messages on their own cloud services. And the purposes of that is a placeholder. And that you'll see a lot of that a lot of these are not necessarily being used by a specific application. So long and roundabout answer to that question.
No, that was perfect. How about next question? Is there a time limit for how long this is stored for?
What do you mean, the iCloud Drive information? iCloud Drive information is in there for as long as you use it. However, we've just found out that Apple does reserve the right that if an iCloud account has not been used, and I can't remember the specific period, 6 months seems to be sticking in my head, that they do reserve the right to close or suspend an iCloud account if it's not been used for a specific period of time. So just one of those things that if you are in a position where that data is vital, you might want to get a preservation order into Apple if you need to do that. Need to preserve that data before obtaining a warrant to get it. I would preserve that data because in particular, if you're investigating a case where that iCloud data is important to you, you may want to preserve that. You can go to Apple's website. Also in our AF1 class, or Apple Forensic Investigations class, we talk about this and how you can get information from Apple. Apple has a really good sort of walkthrough on how to do this. So it's just another way of doing it. But 6 months stands in my head, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I can check and follow up with you.
Great. How about if we only have iCloud ID and not the password, is it possible to get data from the iCloud?
So if you only have the Apple ID, if you're trying to get it on your own, you would need the password. And also don't forget that there's two-factor authentication. Anytime you log into any Apple service, they're going to send a message to a registered device. And there was one of the screenshots there where it showed some registered devices in the corner. These are trusted devices. So what happens is, as soon as you log in from a non-trusted device, whether that's a web browser or anything else, it's going to send you a message to the trusted device saying, hey, you know, somebody's just tried to log into your iCloud account and they are in this location, and they'll pop up a little map. And they're trying to use Google Chrome or Safari or something. Do you authorize it? But it only will show up on a trusted device, and of course that device must be unlocked. So you have the two-factor authentication. So yes, you need the password if you're doing it live. If you're going to Apple for it, you do not need the password. You can provide them the DSID, the Directory Services ID, and the iCloud account, and it would give you that information. Those files that are downloaded locally, obviously, they are available live on your system. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later on.
Great. And last question for now before we let you keep going. We did get a lot of questions that came in, so we'll ask those at the end. But for right now, let's cover, can you recover deleted data that's been synced to multiple devices?
Can you recover deleted data? Okay, so in a situation like this, if a user goes in and deletes a file, if the file is in the cloud, you did notice that there is a trash. Believe it or not, there is a trash in iCloud. It's not kind of well publicized, but again, if you're doing that, you would have to access the cloud to get that trashed file. Now, if the file is local to the device on a macOS machine, you would be able to recover it. And of course, there are a lot of variables and a lot of it depends in that situation. So I hate falling back on sort of, we like to say, you know, federal government answer number one, it depends. And it really does depend, because it depends on whether or not file vault is turned on. It depends on when it was deleted, how it was deleted, where it was on the system when it was deleted. Was it local to the system or was it in the cloud? So again, it depends. If I went in on one of my files that was local to my machine and deleted it on an APFS system that was file vaulted, it would be really difficult to recover it. If it was not file vaulted, your chances are a lot better. I don't know if that helps, but on iOS devices, no, absolutely not. On macOS, it depends.
Thanks, Bruce. All right, we'll let you keep going and then we'll answer any other questions at the end.
Great, thanks, Julie. All right, so we've gotten to that point where we've kind of talked about the basis of this. This is obviously a lot more detailed than what we could go. We can go into a lot more detail, but obviously we only have a certain amount of time. So files have always been able to be shared through iCloud Drive. A lot of people don't really realize that. This is something that has been around for some time. Users can share files through iCloud Drive, you know, using the Messages application, mail. They can email a file through iCloud Drive. You could airdrop a file from iCloud Drive. Those of you who don't know what airdrop is Apple's zero configuration file transferability utility. And basically what it does is there's a handshake over Bluetooth, and then a file is moved over an ad hoc Wi-Fi network. It's an encrypted network. So it creates their own little network, and basically they transfer the file from one person to another person. So you'll get a lot of options to trade things. And when that happens, normally the file gets downloaded onto the system. So you're actually sending the physical file from your iCloud Drive or the location on your iCloud Drive, and it goes either through mail, through messages, through airdrop or other process to the other person. And when the other person gets it, they are downloading the actual physical file, and it would usually go into your downloads folder or whatever folder that you direct it to. When that happens and you're on macOS, you're going to expect some sort of extended attributes that are going to be assigned to that file as a process of downloading. So you're going to get spotlight data, you're going to get quarantine information, you're going to get the KMD item wherefroms, which is a metadata tag that's assigned to a file that tells you where that file came from. Simple as that. And if you kind of think of it, if you're a Windows person, you're just trying to learn the Mac world, Windows kind of has the same type of thing, but it kind of fails in regard to the way Mac does it. You've got these extended attributes, and you've got the zone identifier on Windows, which, you know, gives you, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you downloaded it through the internet, you would get 3. So it came from the internet. Thanks. But that's not really a help to you. The where from information takes it and goes beyond that. And we'll actually give you the location of where it came from. If somebody emailed it to you, what you would get is you would actually get the email address of the person who sent it. If it was sent by messages, you would get the messages, the iCloud account, or potentially you would get the phone number of the person who messaged it, whatever they've set their device up for. So you're gonna expect to see that type of information on a file that's been downloaded from iClouds. However, one thing that was always sort of lacking with iCloud was the fact that iCloud did not have the ability to share files directly from one device, one iCloud account to another iCloud account. So very similar to the way you see Dropbox. When somebody has something in Dropbox and shares it to another person in Dropbox, what they do is they will send a link to that person or an invitation to that person, and that person will receive that link, that invitation. They will click on it and then it will go from there. That never did not happen or did not exist with iCloud until macOS 10.15.4 and iOS 13.4, which just came out not too long ago. And of course, now we've had a little update. So this allows you to share files and folders directly from iCloud account to iCloud account. And what happens is essentially is you get a link, just like you do in Dropbox. You get this link, you click on the link, and boop, it downloads the file to your iCloud account automatically. And of course, if that happens, you can send that link via messages, mail, AirDrop, or you can just give the person the link and then they can go on and get it. You can share files between macOS, iOS, Windows, using iCloud for Windows. You can set, as a user, you can set permissions. You can say, you know what, view only. In other words, you cannot make changes. You can say, you know what, you can make changes. And the whole purpose of this is collaboration, so that you can collaborate with other users and make changes. And those changes are reflected live on the system at the time. So it's pretty cool the way it works. So this is the way it looks if you're a user and you're on iCloud Drive. Essentially what you're doing is you would click on the file. You could either right click or you could click on the little share icon at the top, which you'll see here. There's a little share icon. I've got it up here as well. You click on that little share icon and it's going to give you some options. The options, of course, at the top here, you're going to normally see your mail, messages, AirDrop. Those are the normal sharing procedure. That would allow you to share the file, but it would go to the other person's device and then they would download it onto their device. But we have this new option that's listed here called Add People. And when you click on Add People, that invokes the sharing through iCloud. So what happens here is you will get this Add People sharing option, and you can put the person's name in, and then you can set the permissions. So in this case, we've set permissions that only people you invite can do it, and they can view only, or it's a read-only file. So in other words, the person can't make changes. Once you hit share, in this case, it's showing AirDrop, but we could choose mail or messages or copy link. The next one shows messages, but essentially it's all the same anyway. Basically, any one of those you choose is going to give you a link. And in that link, you're going to see the name of the file, which will be usually right at the end of the link. So you can see that this one, x2-light, is at the end of the link. So you're going to see this is what the other user is going to get. And the other user is going to see this. Here's a message that's been sent to the other user, and he gets a message saying, hey, you know what? You want to share my file? And here it is. And you can see it's telling you it's in iCloud Drive. When you click on that, you have two options. The options are not now. I don't want to open it now. I'll open it later. Or you click on open. If you click not now, it saves it into iCloud Drive. If you click open, it saves it, downloads it, and allows you to open it. In other words, downloads it to your local machine, then allows you to open it. The difference here, as opposed to what we had earlier, is that this is the link. So it's going iCloud disk, iCloud Drive to iCloud Drive, and then you're pulling it down. Somewhere between the iCloud Drive and the iCloud Drive, we start to lose some of that metadata. So let's have a look at this on a forensic case. So what I've done is I've taken us directly to our users library mobile documents. This is where we expect to find files that have been downloaded onto this device through iCloud. And what you're seeing in here is, again, you're seeing files that some of which will have information in it that are relevant and accessible by this user using his Mac, and some that won't. For example, things at the bottom here, like parking frenzy. Some of this stuff may not even be in existence on one of these systems. It may only be on his iOS device. For example, Instagram. There's not going to be Instagram, the pictures from your Instagram account located in here. Quite often these are placeholders in here. But what will write data here are things like numbers, pages, preview, QuickTime. These are Apple applications that have been given permission or set up to use iCloud Drive as their primary storage location for that application. If I move on to the next slide, or move on a little bit further, you'll notice iCloud data. Sorry, I'm in the wrong one here. Let me just go back one more. Cloud Docs. Cloud Docs represents the files that are in iCloud Drive. Now, you may have files that are found under Pages, Numbers, Preview, or other applications, QuickTime, but those have been saved directly by those applications to iCloud Drive. These are the files that you would open up in Finder, and you clicked on your iCloud Drive icon in Finder and drag that file into iCloud Drive. And you will see that none of these, in this case, are showing that .iCloud extension. They are all local resident files on this system. They are available on this system currently right now. So offline, they are available. And you can see this information right in here. So when we're looking at files that we find within here, we can do a few things about this. First of all, some people say, you know what, I don't want to navigate down through this, all this. This is difficult, like my goodness. Like some of these get really buried. And how do I remember? Well, you know what, you can filter for this type of stuff as well. I've created a little filter here in BlackLight. If I click on my filter, I've made a filter saying path contains mobile documents and path contains cloud docs. And I've set it that all of those conditions must be met. There's a reason for that. And a reason why I just didn't say path contains cloud docs. And you're going to find out in a minute, because in actual fact, there's another directory called cloud docs. So I need to have the mobile documents in as well. So you need to have both of them. There is another directory. We're going to come across that in a few minutes. That's going to show this. So again, in this view, what is this showing us? These are showing you files that are available and in iCloud Drive that are available to the computer offline. None of these are showing .iCloud. In other words, all of these have been downloaded. But the path is important because we now know that he has files found in iCloud Drive. If I click on one of these files, if I go down, I'm going to click on one of these files and have a quick peek at it. Let me just see which one I'm looking for. You know what, I'm going to go next on the next screen here, back to this one. And let's click on this text document. Okay, it's a simple text document, but if I click on metadata inside this view, there's a lot of good metadata. And if I scroll down a little bit further and start looking at some Spotlight data, look at the stuff I'm seeing here. Okay, first of all, I know that this file has been airdropped to somebody. And it's telling me that this was sent using airdrop and that this user using this account sent it. And he sent it to this computer. It's going to track the computer's name. Sometimes you will get the user's iCloud account ID, the one that who received it. You may find their iCloud account ID listed right in this value right here. In this case, it's not there. I don't know why it's not there, but it's not there in this case. What I'm showing you here is Spotlight data. Just a little bit here, we've had several webinars about Spotlight. Vico and Joe from our science department, they have done a wonderful job on Spotlight. And I can tell you, if you're not looking at Spotlight in your Mac forensic cases, there is just a ton of information you're missing. It is so valuable. The amount of stuff that Spotlight indexes, for those of you who don't know what it is, Spotlight is Apple's indexing tool. And essentially what it does is that as soon as you put something in, it indexes it. And it grabs all sorts of data about it, including tons of metadata, because Spotlight is not just the content of the file, it's all information about the file. And that's what we're seeing here. This is all content about that file. This is all metadata about that file that has been indexed by Spotlight. So it's very powerful. Now, Spotlight's not the end all and be all. You can shut it off as a user, and then when you go to do your forensics, there's nothing there. But if you're not doing it or your tool's not finding all this Spotlight metadata, you're missing a ton of information, okay? So you can see a lot of data here that's really important. So if I'm looking through a case and I find a picture of interest to me, so in this case, I find this picture, and as you can see, these cars are missing something that might be important for them, might be useful for them, and hopefully helps them get sold, but it's missing a bunch of stuff. And I'm looking at this, if I was investigating a case, I'm like, okay, how did this picture get here? So the first thing I would start to do is, as an examiner, is you're going to start to down the usual routes. You're going to start looking at your quarantine data information. You're going to try and find where from information. You're going to find some metadata that tells me how this file here ended up inside this path. And the path that we're talking about is the Cloud Docs. Cloud Docs, as we remember, represents iCloud Drive. It represents the iCloud Drive on Finder. When you click on that, that's where you'll find it, okay? So I'm gonna start looking inside and try and find some metadata that tells me where this is coming from. And if I scroll down through here, and again, I look at some of this information, here's my metadata up above, and it tells me a whole bunch of stuff, but nothing that I can really use. Okay, there's a lot of stuff. It's telling me it's in Cloud Docs. Well, you know what? I kind of know that. That's where I'm looking. So, yep, I know that. That's helpful. Then I go down and I start looking through my Spotlight data. The only thing I can really find that really might be helpful to me is I know that this picture was taken with an iPhone 8. Now, if my suspect had an iPhone 8, the immediate sort of belief is, my suspect's got an iPhone 8, it's in his computer, on his device, in his iCloud, with an iPhone 8, he likely put the picture there. Of course, we can't work on that, we need a little bit more. So we still need to know how this file got to this location. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna navigate out to another location. We're gonna go to Josh, back to the library again, and now we're gonna go to application support, and this is where this other folder called Cloud Docs comes in. So we are at this path. Users, library, application support, Cloud Docs. And in this location, we have a folder called session, then a folder called DB, and inside here we have a SQLite database called client.db. And there are a lot of files that are found inside this database. Come on. Oh, that was good. Come on. Okay, I'll reopen it. Just bear with me a second, folks. Little technical glitch, too many clicks. Okay, I'll just reopen the file again. Okay. All right, while I'm waiting here, let's just go on and have a look here, and we'll just go on and look at the sessions here. Inside that document, there is a file that would be found in here that tells us and describes to us exactly what's going on with that specific application. So the database is going to track the information in iCloud Drive, and it's going to show the state of that file within the application. And what's happening is it's going to tell us where this is. So we can have a look at this particular location. So I'm going to show you what this looks like, even although I've got a bit of an issue finding my options here. Inside this database, we have some tables. And inside the database tables, we have the file names that are found within iCloud Drive. So you'll see this information here. Here is my file, 1422.jpg. You're seeing this information right here. Now, this table, along with other ones, track a lot of really good information. And as you can see here, we have a huge amount of data here. And we have two tables of interest to us. The first table that we're really interested in is client items. The second table that we're interested in is item recursive properties. So there's two tables of interest, and those are very helpful to us in our analysis. Now, inside these tables, you're going to find that there are several columns within those tables of help. Under client underscore items, you're going to see things such as the name of the files, the dates of the files. So you will see birth date. Apple likes to use that term, birth date. Birth date represents the created date of the file. Then you'll see FSID, which is the file system ID. In other words, the identification or the file ID of that file on that volume for that computer. And then you'll see something called item underscore creator underscore ID. That represents the person who created that file, and Apple tracks it as 0 meaning self or 1 being somebody else. So it's either you or someone else made this file. Nobody else is looking at it, just you or somebody else. And then you'll see something called item sharing options. And we'll speak about this later, but these are the sharing options of that file. And those are those sharing options that I showed you earlier. When you enter those sharing options, when you agree to send that file or share that file with somebody, you can say, you know what, they can view only that file, or they can make changes, they can write to that file, or who can access it? Can it be anybody with the link, or can it be a specific person that's been invited? So you can share a link to somebody. I can copy a link, just like you can do in Dropbox, copy a link, drop it into a bunch of emails and send it to people. Or I can, within Apple Mail, I can say, you know what, here's the link, and it's going directly to that person, and that's when you would enter that person's name in it. That means even if that other person shared the link out to somebody else, they wouldn't be able to view it. So there's those options as well. We're going to talk about those options in a second. And then you've got this version underscore M time, which is the modified time of the file. So Apple uses that term a lot as well. They'll use M time and birth time. So if you see birth time or M time is modified. Birth time is the date and time the file was created. And then you have another one, item underscore last used time. Be very careful with this. It's often regarded as last access date and time. Not always the case. Just be very careful with that. And then there's another one that's rather interesting to us, and it's version edited since shared. This one's rather important because if the file that's being shared is allowed to be edited or modified by other users, any one of those users can edit that file. When that file gets edited, and as soon as the person says save, what happens is that information gets pushed to iCloud and immediately pushed to all the other users of that file. And it's actually kind of weird because that file, you will, if you've got Finder open when that's happening, you'll actually see the modified date and time change right in front of you. It'll happen right in front of you and you can see it. So you will see 1 indicating that that has happened. Quite often with a lot of these, in particular with files that are read only, there may not be a value listed here. You may not even see a value. So in other words, what you would end up with is a blank. So you might see 0 meaning no, or 1 meaning yes, or quite often you're going to see blank, meaning that that file might be read-only and therefore can't be changed. Under the table item underscore recursive properties, you will see 2 columns of interest, shared underscore by me and shared to me. That, of course, is pretty self-explanatory. That's going to track files that are shared by this user or shared to this user, and they are listed as 0s and 1s. So what can we do with this information? Well, we can create a SQL query. I'm going to show you what that looks like. If I go in here and select my SQL query, I'll explain what this query is. I'm going to connect the 2 tables, item recursive properties and client underscore items. So what I've done is I've taken the 2 properties, the shared by me count and the shared to me count from the item recursive properties. And then I've also brought up some other ones that are of importance to us. I'm bringing up things like item file name, file ID, sharing options, birth time, last use time, creator. Okay, so I'm going to pull all those in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to take this information from that table, recursive properties. I'm going to join client items. And then what I'm going to say is I want to only show data that is a 1, in other words, a yes. I only want to see the ones that have been shared by this user, and I want to see the ones that have been shared to this user. When I run that and check that, I get my results. And here are my results listed below. And in here, you can see a shared to me count and a shared by me. So these ones down below, these ones here that are listed from this line down, these have all been shared by this user. These ones that are circled have all been shared to this user, and look what's here. This is my file here. So this is telling me, wait a minute, that file that I was just about to accuse this user of taking the picture himself, which could potentially mean that he was involved in the theft, or at least was aware of the theft, that actually was shared to him. That came from somebody else, somebody other than his iCloud account. So it can't be shared to him from his own iCloud account. And then we look further along, we'll have the file ID of that specific file. Then we have our sharing options, which I'm going to talk about in 1 second. And we have our birth time, which is the created date and time, the last used date and time. And you'll notice under item creator, it's blank. And quite often you will see that blank in here, meaning that it doesn't know necessarily who created it. It does not have that information. And quite often you will see that. That just basically means that it can't determine it based upon metadata that's on that file. It basically will start looking at that metadata. It'll look at like spotlight data or any other information that it can gather. And then you can see that we do have one file here, this X2 Lite, the one that we looked at earlier when we were talking about when we first started, this X2 Lite portion. This one has actually been modified by a user since it was downloaded. So in other words, in this situation, we know that the file x2-lite.rtf that's on this file, on this computer right now, that's not the original one that was downloaded. So at some point in time, that might be useful to you. Now, where this comes in handy is you could see this happening a lot in the corporate world. You could see this happening a lot when you're investigating corporate cases. This type of thing can happen, and you will see this type of thing happening in your cases. So while I talk to you about those sharing options, if this is important in your case, I cannot stress this enough. Just because these values exist today, that doesn't mean to say that when 10, 15, 15 comes out, or 1016 comes out, that these values will remain the same. So please do not take this verbatim. I would, if this was important in your case, test, test, test. It's really important to know that. But currently as it stands, under the item underscore sharing underscore options, you will see 12, which means that the user can make changes. In other words, the file is read-only, and anyone with a link can make changes to that file. 64 is only people invited can make changes. So in other words, those specific people's names have to be in that sharing option. 68 will show only shared can make changes. So in other words, there's a slight different there. That's where you actually share the file. And the last one, only with invite, view only. So this is a read only, and you must be invited to make the shares. So the question comes down now, how do you know who shared it? So we could go on for hours on this one. Databases, we've got to go back and start looking at back to our normal, where did this come from? So now at least we know it's a link. There's not, the physical download information is not going to be there. So things like your quarantine database, it's not going to be tracked in there because it's not a downloadable file. It's a link, you connect it to the link. Unified logs, well, if you rely on unified logs for airdrop and other information, and a lot of tools do, you're in for a world of disappointment because unified logs are very powerful. They're extremely powerful and very helpful. However, the problem with unified logs is they do expire. And we're also starting to see more and more information being maintained as private in unified logs. In other words, Apple is protecting that information so it's being blocked or removed from the actual log that's saved to your system. So a little bit of disappointment that could be found in there, especially when it comes to airdrop information. How about the old venerable Apple system logs or ASL logs? Well, yeah, they're going to find some information. You may find information about connecting to a link file in there. You will also find that information in unified logs, where you can see that information and that you've connected to a link. How about just taking the file name and doing a search? In this case, if we search by a file name, guess what we're going to find? We're going to find that this file was shared through Messages application, and you'll find the link in Messages application. You can find the link potentially in emails, email information. There's lots of options to find it. So lots and lots and lots of ways to determine this, but this goes back to basic forensics at this point. So kind of one last thing about this. Why are there no attributes for that file? That file that gets downloaded to the system, why are there no attributes? Well, there were attributes on that file, on that picture. There would be attributes telling you where that file came from. There were attributes about that file, who sent it, where it came from, etc., etc. But for some reason, when files go up to iCloud and get transferred from iCloud to iCloud, not iCloud to computer to iCloud, iCloud to iCloud, somewhere along the line, those attributes are getting stripped away, or they're not following the file. Now, there is a lot of documentation out there showing and indicating that iCloud is in fact removing some extended attributes, and that could be the case at what's happening here. So also remember that when you are clicking on that, you are clicking on the link, a link to the file. You're not actually clicking on the file. So physically, you're not downloading that file. What's happening is that file is getting transferred from iCloud account to iCloud account. And then what happens is it gets downloaded. As soon as it goes into your iCloud account, it gets downloaded to your local device. When it gets downloaded to your local device, the likelihood is those extended attributes are not following it to the local device. So you will not necessarily find those attributes. There's a lot there. We cover this type of stuff in our Apple Forensic Investigations course. All of our classes are now virtual due to the conditions that we're in right now. So we're trying to make these as virtual as we can. Our new basic forensic investigations course, which is our BlackLight training and certification, is also virtual. We just hosted one last night, or finished one last night. We have Apple Forensic Investigations. We have more coming up, more dates being announced on that. And soon we will also have our Advanced Apple Forensic Investigations online as well. Our Windows Forensic Investigations course, which is an excellent course. We've already done one of those live online, and we'll probably be doing more, so stay tuned. Keep in touch with those because that's a lot of good information. Again, we travel into this and dig into this a lot more than what we would normally expect to in a 1 hour webinar. So Julie, any questions, follow up on that?
Yes, so you have had a ton of questions come in, Bruce. So I know we're at the top of the hour, so we'll just go through a few right now, and then we will answer everyone's questions after. We'll email you and follow up with you individually. So let's start with what date and time stamps are available for iCloud files? Does the creation date and time follow the file up to iCloud?
Excellent question. So if you are doing this on a Mac or an iOS device, HFS Plus and APFS respect created dates. So if I create the file 2 years ago, so if I created it April 30th, what's 2 years ago, 2018, and then decided today that I was going to put it up into iCloud, the created date of that file would still be April 30th, 2018. When I transfer it to another user's iCloud in the manner that we showed, it would be April 30th, 2018. Created dates get respected in macOS, and you'll see that those files that we were looking at, those created dates get respected throughout in macOS. Obviously, your modified dates and times are going to be different. And of course, on macOS, we have that additional date and time from macOS 10.7 and above. We have that date added date. That's the date and time the file was added to that folder on that volume. So now you have that new kind of volume, that new date and time that you don't see in that other operating system, right? So you're only going to see that on macOS. Does that answer that, Julie?
Yep, that sounds great. We'll go on to the next question. If an iCloud file is downloaded locally and later deleted in iCloud from another device, is the local file also deleted?
If the file is downloaded, if it's downloaded locally, and it is in that Cloud Documents folder, you've got to remember that that Cloud Documents folder is a live folder. So like I was saying, when I was playing around with it and trying to hide evidence, as soon as I put a file and I navigated using terminal to the COM Apple Cloud Docs folder, and I went in there and I dropped the file into there, it automatically pushed that to iCloud. And conversely, if I went into that location and deleted a file using terminal from that, it would delete it from iCloud and delete it from the device. If I opened up Finder to my iCloud window, to my iCloud location, and I deleted a file from iCloud, it would delete it from the iCloud drive and from that local device. Now, that gets back to the deleted files on your Mac, and that's where it depends. So is it recoverable? Well, it depends. It may be there, it may be anywhere else, but if it's that way inclined, where is it going to go? It's going to go to your trash. And then eventually you would delete it from your trash. So you could, if the person hasn't emptied his trash, it would move it to the trash file. And then once the person deletes it, it may be recoverable, it may not be recoverable at that point. But yes, if somebody deletes it, it would be deleted. Now, if it was downloaded and put right into your downloads folder, then no, because it's actually saved on your computer in a different location.
Great, thanks for clearing that up. So what is the difference between alternate DSID and the account DSID, which can be used to send to Apple for a court order?
So the the alternate DSID, I'm not really sure, because almost everyone I've ever seen has had it in the same number. The only thing I would think about with alternate DSID is family sharing. So with family sharing is you will log in with your iCloud account, but your iCloud account is part of a family. And therefore, there will be some family sharing going on. And of course, as a user, you can go in and change what you want to share. So you might get family sharing turned on. And then if you're out taking pictures with your iPhone, because you're in a family sharing situation and you haven't made any changes, all those pictures are going to be shared to all the members of your family. So the family share account will be its own iCloud account, which of course will have a DSID. So the only thing I can assume in that, and like I said, I've never seen one, so I don't know. I'm assuming that's what it is. The family share account will be the DSID, the alternate DSID will be the family share account in that. The DSID is your family share account. So rule of thumb when dealing with anybody, when you're dealing with, when you're having to go for warrants, I would make it as clear as I possibly can. So in that situation, if I was sending that to Apple, I would be saying the iCloud account ID is this, which is the email address. The user's name is this. The DSID is this, and the alternate DSID is that. And that's what I would put down. Also, don't forget, if that is the case, then you're going to have to do some extra work to get that alternate DSID and the alternate account information, because you're probably going to want to get information off that as well.
Great. So speaking of family sharing, if that's enabled, is there a way to discern which account uploaded and created the file?
In a specific, again, that I hate to say this, but again, that depends. So again, you don't want to be that way. So again, a lot of it, the actual files, I don't believe with family sharing, you actually use the same iCloud drive. I think it's all for things like contacts, appointments, pictures, that type of thing. In which case, if it is pictures and all that, you are going to have to dive into the Photo SQLite database, which is on your Mac, is going to be within your Photos library, and then you go into the actual location of the Photo SQLite database, Photos library data, Photo SQLite. And on your iOS device, it's going to be mobile media photo data, Photo SQLite. And inside there, it's going to show you the owner of that file. Every person will get a UID, and you will see the UID of the owner of that file, who sent that or who shared that file, because essentially that's what you're doing in family sharing. You are sharing, and you would see that that would be part of it, but it would only be saved within the Photo SQLite database. It's not going to be appended as a piece of metadata to that picture. So you're not going to see the user's ID associated to that picture, but you will see it in the Photo SQLite database.
Thanks for clearing that up. I know we have had a lot more questions come in that we didn't get to today, so thank you everyone for submitting those questions. We will reach out to you individually after the webinar to answer those. So thank you for writing in to Bruce, and make sure you are also following us on social after the webinar, on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and make sure to subscribe to our blog at blackbagtech.com. Bruce will reach out to you to follow up, but if you want to learn more about any of our software offerings or services, you can email sales@blackbagtech.com. And thank you, Bruce, for walking us through all this information today. I know it was really helpful, and we had a lot of great questions come in to prove it. So thanks for taking the time today, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Everybody stay safe.
Thank you.